Hello everyone and welcome back to another quick Blender tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how you can turn any 3D object into water and watch it splash on the floor. Make sure you first of all save your file. I've already saved mine, so I just pressed save as in this object file and saved it as couch sim, since I'm going to be doing this with a couch. Keep in mind you can do this with literally any object, so I could create a cube for example, and I could add a simulation to this as well. The more vertices your object has, the harder it will be for Blender to simulate it, so just keep that in mind. But as you can see, if I click this object and press tab to enter edit mode, this one isn't too bad. So I'll press tab back into object mode, and now I'm going to press shift A, mesh, cube. I'm going to press S to scale, and then 10. Now I'm going to bring it up, so I'll press G, Z and move it up. And I'm going to select my couch, which is just this cube 2, so I'll rename it to couch. And I'll press G and Z to bring it up. I'll turn on my X-ray mode here, and I'll bring it up a bunch. Now I'm going to click on this cube, and I'm going to double click here and call it domain. Now I'm going to click on fluid under this physics properties tab. Change the type to domain. Change from gas to liquid. Resolution divisions to 150. That should be enough for this one. Then down here I'm going to turn on diffusion, and as you can see, if I click this button I can choose from a few presets, so this determines what sort of liquid will be simulated. So for this I'm going to keep it as water, although you can experiment with other types of fluids. I'll then left click this box called mesh. Also make sure this liquid is on, turn on is resumable, and set our type here to all under cache. I'm going to keep mine at the default of 1 to 250. Although I don't think I'll render out the whole animation for time saving sake. But you certainly can if you wish. And now let's change the settings in my couch. So left click my couch, left click fluid again under these physics properties here, and I'll set type to flow. Then flow type I'll set it to liquid, and I'll keep it on geometry. I'll then set my initial velocity, change this to 4, and I'll need to make my z a negative number. So essentially what this initial velocity down here controls is what direction our mesh is going to fall in. So if I made this a positive number on the z-axis, it would go up, since z is facing this way. So I'm going to need to put in a negative z number so it goes down. So I'll go with -6. Now we've done that, I'm going to click on my domain again, which is this big cube. And down under cache, I'm now going to choose a directory. So I'll click this file button, and here I'm just going to click this button here to create a new file, and I'll call this couch simulation. I'll left click it and then press accept, and accept again, and now I know exactly where my fluid simulation is held. Keep in mind fluid simulations use a lot of storage over time, so it is good to know where all your simulations are being held so you can easily delete them in the future if you don't want them. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and bake this animation. So I'll just press bake all, and I'll get back to you when it's finished. Alright, so my bake just finished, or rather I stopped the bake just by pressing the escape key at frame 110, just because I won't have the time tonight to bake it all the way out to frame 250, because I want to get this video out to you guys as soon as possible. Although if you would prefer, you can take it all the way up to 250 or even higher if you prefer. So I'm going to give you a little showcase of how it's being baked. I can't really play this animation unfortunately because my recording software can't handle that as well as a animation in the viewport. If you're going to do it in the viewport yourself, do keep in mind that we'll use a lot of your computer's processing power, so you may not get a frame for frame result and it may lag, so just keep that in mind. But I'll just scroll through these frames here, and you can essentially see what's happening at different stages in the animation. But now I can see everything in my animation is looking like it's working. I'm going to go ahead and get ready to render this animation out. So the first thing I'm going to do is come up to my original couch, which is where we got that water from, and we're going to press this camera icon beside it, and that means when we're rendering our animation we won't see it in the final result, because otherwise you'll just have a floating couch sitting there when everything else is happening around it. If you don't see this camera icon, just click this filter button and turn on this camera button. See if I turn it off, it disappears. If I turn it back on, you can see it again. Then I'm going to click on my domain and I'm going to add a water-like material. So I'll go into my viewport shading, down to material properties, click plus new. I'm I'm going to select my base color and I'm going to give it a slight blue hue. Scroll down and under roughness, I'll set roughness to 0, transmission to 1. Then under viewport display and then settings, turn on screen space refractions here. And then under render properties, I'm going to switch my render engine to Eevee. You can use cycles if you wish, however it will take a lot longer to render, and I'm going to use Eevee for today. Now I'm going to set my render to 125, or actually I'll move it down to 100. Then I'll turn on bloom, bring down the drop down, and I think I can keep all those settings as they are, maybe change threshold to 0.5. Then under screen space reflections, I'll check the box, turn on refraction, and turn off half res trace. Then I'll turn my trace position to 1, and my max roughness to 0.75 or 76. Finally, I'll turn on ambient occlusion, set the distance to 0.5, factor left at 1, and leave the trace precision at 0.25. This camera icon to go into camera, and under view I'm going to check under view lock this camera to view button, and I'm going to move my camera out, and I'm just going to move my camera into position. And I forgot to mention, if you don't have a camera, just press Shift A, come down to camera, and select camera here. So I'll zoom in a wee bit. Now I'll turn off my camera to view. Now I'm going to click this button here to enter viewport shading, press Shift and then A, then under light I will select area, G and then Z to bring it up. Then under my object data properties, I'll change my power to 1000, scale to 10, might need to make my light even brighter, so I'll change it to 10,000, then I'll press Shift A, mesh, plane, then I'll scale, then I'll press S and then 40, press Shift A again, and I'm going to create another light source, just a point this time, G and then Z, and I'll bring it to the left by pressing G and then X. I'll change the radius size to around 10, power to 10,000. My radius is a bit big, so I'll maybe change it to about 2. And then I'll come over to my area light, and I will change my color to a more slightly blue hue. Then I'll click my plane, Shift D, I'll come back into solid view to speed up the time here, R, X, 90, G, Y to bring it back, and I'll do the same, click the plane, Shift D to duplicate, R and then Y, then I'll press 90, then G and then X to bring it back. Now I'll have a look in the render preview, and yeah, that's looking alright. Maybe move this plane a tiny bit further back. Finally, in my render settings under shadows, I'm going to set my cube size to 4096. Make sure to save your scene by pressing Ctrl S, and I will change my cascade size to 4096. Now all I'm going to do is come down to these output properties, and I'll choose a directory to store my animation. So just create a new folder somewhere and save it there. So I just called my one couch, save it as PNG, make sure all these settings are the same. You can change back to timeline and just make sure your finishing frame is as long as you want your animation to be. Now back in my camera view, I'm going to switch back to solid view and adjust my camera into position. Around here will do. I'll maybe need to zoom in a bit so it doesn't remove that bit from the render. And I'll click on my camera here just by clicking it here. Then I'll click on my object properties and I'll decrease the focal length just so I can see the entire thing. I'll move it down a bit, rotate, and about here should do nicely. Set my focal length a little bit higher. And now we can see it nicely. Just before I render here, I'm actually going to set my render settings lower, so I'll set mine to 50. Just click render and then left click render animation. Great, so now my animation is finished rendered. I'm going to go ahead and put it into an image sequence. If you want to know how to do this, I've made a quick video on it. Up in the top right hand corner, it should be appearing now. And it's also in the description if it doesn't appear for you. So make sure to check that out if you want to turn this into a video. But with that, that pretty much concludes today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it useful. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I make videos in the future. Thank you all, and I'll see you in the next video.